All right, in this demonstration, I'm going to show you a few different things. First off, the first thing we have to come up with in order to get our slab to make our cylinder, okay, for our mug, is that we need to make a template. Okay, now I want everybody to start out by making a template that is 6 inches tall by 12 inches wide. So that's basically our piece of paper minus a little bit of paper, just 3 inches. Cut it straight off. Make sure to measure down and down so you have the same thing all the way. So that's our sort of template to start. And then you're just going to sort of fold it, and we can get some tape. I can tape this to see how big our mug could possibly be, okay? So if you look at mine, you know, that's quite a bit longer or taller, and that's quite a bit wider than my mug. And I said it's better to make it a little bit bigger because this will shrink. Okay, this is going to shrink. All right, so a little bit bigger than that. So if you want it more narrow, you can just come in like this and make it more narrow. If that's too tall for you, then all you have to do is just measure down a little bit and cut a little extra off. I wanted to say start with this first, so you can always remove a little bit later. Otherwise, it's too short and you have to use another piece of paper. So start out 6 by 12 for your template. Got to have that first. Then we'll roll our slab. We'll put our template down on our slab. We'll cut around the template, and then we'll have a nice rectangle of clay to make our cylinder. Okay. And again, when you're making your slabs, just go ahead and push with the palm of your hand, the heel right there. Push it down a bit. And again, you're wanting to get it longer than wider. Every time you do that, free the clay by pulling up, lifting up, and setting it back down. I have my sideboards. I'll move this out of the way. And I have my rolling pin. And let's see, I'm going to, how wide is that? I'm going to make it a little bit wider first. So I'm going to roll it a little bit this way. Just a little. Okay, going to lift it up again. Set it on either side. Roll all the way out. Okay, if it'll stop stretching, then I have to pick it up gently, put it back down in the middle. Lift it up, put it back down. Now yours may not be long enough. We could even turn this thing so it is diagonal so that we have a little bit more room on the ends. I used to have bigger clay boards, but they just disappeared in the move. And I've got a chunk of clay on here so you can see that it's making dents. So I want to take that rib and then I'm going to scrape it off there. Okay. And I'm going to roll it some more. Now it's stretching a little bit further. Whoops, that got a little thin. And if we needed a little bit more length, I could actually help you get this a tiny bit more thin to get some more length. But if I put my template down, that's pretty close. Okay, it kind of got messed up a little bit here. I could kind of like fold this in and re-roll it a little bit, but that's pretty close. And I don't want it that tall anyway. But I'm not actually going to be making the rectangle for the side walls for the vertical height for my mug. I'm going to be making, okay, the base, the bottom. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is make sure it is exactly how you want it in terms of a circle, the cylinder, so that it's not squished like this. I can kind of unsquish it, push it a little bit. And I might wrap mine up really well, so it's sturdy, but it's still very pliable. Okay, so now it'd be kind of hard. I could do this way. Mine's a little wonky that way, so I'm actually going to do it this way. This is straighter. Okay, I could, in theory, take my tool and just go around it, but what's going to happen if I do that is that it's going to mark up and mar and scratch up and cut off part of my mug, and I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I've got my water bucket, and I'm going to get my brush, and I'm going to just get this wet, like so. And I'm going to stick this in the middle there, push a little bit, and I'm going to lift up. And you can see there is a ring that is exactly what I just did on the bottom. okay, of my piece. So I'm going to cut that out. All right, it's best to cut it a little bit bigger, and I would clean off your knife first. So I'm going to cut a little bit. I'm just going to sort of trace around it first. It's better to cut it out a little bit. Oopsie, I had to cut it too far away. Too far in, rather. So I'm just kind of barely dragging it like that. Okay. And then I can come in, keep your knife straight up and down. Come in for this direction also. And before I did this, you need to make sure that you freed it first, because if it's stuck there, it's going to stretch the circle that you're making, your base, if you don't do that first. And I think I've got all that down. That looks good. All right, and you can even give this to someone else for them to make their base. But I'll set that aside. Okay, so it looks a little bit funky. It's got some edges on there, but I can just smooth those out, just little bits, just gently. If you do it too hard, it'll mess your little circle up. And just like on the other one, you can take a rib that's nice and clean, and you can just kind of gently scrape it across. You could even go around it on the edge. You can get rid of all the bottom parts, the little wrinkles if you want. Looks like I've got some dry clay in there, but that's what happens when I didn't clean my tool off. Okay, so now let's see how it fits here. There's my bottom. There's the bottom. All right, that looks pretty good. It's actually a little bit bigger. It's a little bit bigger, but that's okay. I can trim off that excess. So now I just have to attach it. So we've got our scoring tool, the small scoring tool. Just kind of clean that off a little bit, should be okay. And I've got my water in my bucket and my brush. And I'm going to start by scoring it. Okay, make sure you rough it up, and then you can rough it back the other way. Should be roughed up pretty well. Okay, just doing. Okay, that's not enough. You've got to rough it up back and forth. Okay, and so then I've got it's my bottom, so I'm going to rough this up here. And you can rough a little bit more into the center just to be on the safe side. We can always smooth it out in the inside a little bit later, and I can show you how to do that. Sometimes it's a little tricky getting your fingers down in there. Whoops. Okay. So now I'm going to get some water. And just kind of gently tap it on there. Otherwise, if you brush it, it might rip up the little ridges you've made. And normally they call it score and slip because I've scored it, and then we use slip, which is like a toothpaste, really squishy type of clay that we can make. But if the clay is wet enough, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so I'm just kind of pressing it down directly on my mug piece, and then I got it. And so I've got some extra, so I'm actually just going to trim that off carefully. And if you've got like water, we can like get a little dry sponge and wipe that off, because of course if you do this you'll leave fingerprints, and if those dry, your fingerprints will actually be part of your outside. So I'm just going to trim that off a little bit. Just have to be careful that you're not trimming into the wall of your mug. Okay. All right, that looks pretty good. So now I can come back in and erase that seam with my rib. can just go like so. It's a little goopy. I can just wipe it off on the clay board. And I cut in a little bit, but that's not too bad. I can kind of do that to the bottom. And it's a nice bottom for my piece. And if I look inside, I really don't see much in the way of the little scrape stuff. And I can also come in and I can get rid of my seam a little bit more, make sure this is clean. And I can come in and I can bring it up like so to really get rid of that seam or any other little wrinkles or anything like that.